If you could take into your own hands a kind of magical telescope, a telescope that would enable you to look back in time, across 2 millennia, to the first century of the Common Era, to focus in on the city of Jerusalem, to peer into the life of the early church, into the life, the ways, the customs and controversies, the activities of the earliest followers of Jesus, this is what you would see.
The followers of Jesus devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they met together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts.
It's a kind of still life, a snapshot, a freeze frame, a moment in time captured in words. But there is so much more. The biblical tells stories about the very first Christians, about how they struggled to pick up where Jesus had left off, about how they recover from his death, regroup, and organize themselves, and eventually literally fan out into the world. It enables us to zoom in on, to bring clear focus to the story of Lydia, the first European convert to Christianity. The story of an Ethiopian eunuch, a high official to Queen Candace, who falls for Jesus body and soul, and who begs right then and there, "Can I please be baptized?" We are able to see into Peter's dream on the rooftop, to observe the conversion of Cornelius and his entire household. We espy a jail-breaking, lock-picking angel. We watch as the healing powers of Jesus are literally transferred to his followers, and they pick up the act of healing. We overhear Peter's first sermons and Paul's many disputations. The Acts of the Apostles is a story of endless adventure, of thrilling quest and daring exposition, as the followers of Jesus, full to the brim with joy and confidence, as they trod the stage of the world, telling any who will listen and many who won't about Jesus of Nazareth and how he came back from the dead. Along the way, there is shipwreck and imprisonment, the martyrdom of Stephen, Paul's conversion, the gathering of funds to relieve the famine-starved in Jerusalem, and the founding of churches, church after church after church. Not least, the Acts of the Apostles tells honestly of controversies and disputes as these very first Christians, abroad upon the wide earth, as they maneuver matters of culture and religion, of ethnicity and custom, of class and caste, of language and local lore, a host of matters that Jesus had not prepared them for. To read the pages of the Acts of the Apostles is to watch as a nascent Christianity begins to rethink itself for a wider world. It is to watch as Christianity evolves from a small, local, parochial movement into literally a global spiritual undertaking. We get to look in on our forebears as they puzzle over brand new questions and complexities. We follow Paul and Peter, Timothy, Barnabas, as they each carry the precious cargo of the gospel, the good news, one human being to another. From Jerusalem to Troas to Corinth, from Antioch and Iconium to Ephesus and Miletus and Caesarea, from Athens and Philippi to Thessalonica, Malta, and Rome. The Acts of the Apostles covers roughly the first 30 years after the death of Jesus, roughly from the year 30 of the Common Era to the year 60. And it is simply unparalleled in its record of the activities and adventure of the earliest Christians. And apart from this fifth book in the New Testament, there is scant record until literally 2.5 centuries later, when the bishop of Caesarea puts pen to paper. The Acts of the Apostles is a thrilling, action-packed, fast-moving story, and I recommend it to you for your summer beach reading list. The stories of shipwreck and navigation and port hopping should fire your imaginations even as you sit on the beach, the sand between your toes and the cool ocean surging and ebbing. While the author of the Acts of the Apostles is unknown, tradition calls him Luke, and there is scholarly consensus that the author of the Gospel according to Luke also authored the Acts of the Apostles, so that Luke Acts are volumes 1 and 2 of this great work. So I am here this morning to ask you, to invite and summon you, to beckon and bid you to consider becoming like Luke, a storyteller, a recorder of Christianity, not ancient Christianity, but today, your own Christianity, as you know it, specifically as you experience it here at Old South Church in Boston. In May of 2019, less than a year from today, we will kick off this church's 350th anniversary year. 3.5 centuries as church. 3.5 centuries of being Christians in Boston, of carrying ourselves the precious cargo of the gospel from generation to generation to generation to this city and beyond. 3.5 centuries of sharing the exquisite story of God's amazing love through tumult and progress, through the making of a new nation, through bloody wars and economic crises and struggles for civil and human rights, through storms and illness and times of great national decision. The Tell the Story Task Force of your 350th Anniversary Committee is unveiling this week our invitation to all of you to contribute to our open source undertaking entitled Concise Encyclopedia, Theological, Historical, and Whimsical of Old South Church in Boston, marking the occasion of our 350th anniversary, 1669 to 2019, by the ministers and members. The white insert in your bulletin has information, the top, the very first item in there, about how to find this online. We've created a long index for you to review, but you may add your own entries if we've forgotten something important. In this open source tome, Concise Encyclopedia, Theological, Historical, and Whimsical of Old South Church in Boston, we expect some entries will be longish, some medium length, and some quite brief. For example, on the brief side, the index lists an entry of this title, Swarming. Now, what would swarming possibly mean? What has it to do with Old South Church? Did we experience an invasion of insects? No. The great Puritan divine, Cotton Mather, authored a grand tome, Magnalia Christi Americana, roughly translated the glorious works of Christ in America, with the subtitle, The Ecclesiastical History of New England from its first planting in 1620 to the year of our Lord 1698. And despite Cotton Mather's deep inside Mather's Magnalia, he tells the story of the founding of this church, Old South Church, the third church in Boston, which was founded in controversy. So I'm going to quote to you now the sentence that needs to go into our concise encyclopedia under the title Swarming. Quote, "For in the month of May 1669, a third church came swarming out of the first, which afterwards made one of the most considerable congregations in the colony." That's my entry under swarming. So, a list of some other entries: architecture, great personages, confirmation, communion, carved animals, dragons and dragoons, ghosts, hypnotwisters, blessing backpacks, marathon scarves, jazz worship, the Willard clock, docents and deacons, social media, our outdoor gardens, candlelighting, the prayer box, providing sanctuary, visiting ICE in detention, people in detention, partnering with GBIO, Boston Warm, City Mission, founding YMCA in America. So what might you want to write? Maybe your experience here in a small group, your attendance at a church retreat or a mission trip, your participation with this church in the AIDS Walk or Boston Pride. What record of this church's witness to the gospel might you want to record for posterity, for our descendants? It could be a large and sweeping entry, or something small and precise. It can be serious or whimsical, historical or anecdotal. We want it all. You see, maybe someday future Christians, 100 years from today, maybe 1,000 years from today, will pick up Old South Church's concise encyclopedia, theological, historical, and whimsical, and read your story and give color to the kind of Christianity you know today. It may feel to them as if they are taking into their own hands a kind of magical telescope, a telescope that enables them to look back into time, across a century, perhaps across a millennia, to the early years of the 21st century, of the Common Era, to focus in on the city of Boston, to peer into an old church at the corner of Dartmouth and Boylston Streets, to see into the life, the ways, the customs, and controversies, the activities of these followers of Jesus. What do you want them to know? What might they see and learn? What have you to say to our descendants about the adventure of faith in which we are together, even now, engaged?